Welcome back to Andersen Acres. We're in the kitchen again today, but we're not baking. Instead, we are making cultured butter. Cultured butter is absolutely fantastic. I don't make a secret of the fact that I absolutely adore butter. I use butter in pretty much everything. Butter is life, okay? And I really like making my own butter. And even more than making my own butter, do I like making cultured butter. Cultured butter is a lot easier to make than people realize. It's actually not any more difficult than making regular butter, and regular butter is not that hard to make. So if you've never tried or heard of cultured butter, well, you definitely should try it. It's fantastic, okay, especially for cooking and baking. It is just fantastic. So cultured butter is actually made from cultured cream. This is just cream. This is not cultured yet. I'll show you how to culture it in a minute. But cultured cream contains live bacterial cultures that have fermented for a certain period of time. A lot of our foods that we make are made this way. Things like yogurt, things like cheeses. These are all started with bacterial cultures. Okay, so that's what we're doing today. We're starting it with a bacterial culture. In my case, I'm using a powdered bacterial culture, but we'll talk about other ways you can get that culture in a minute. I'm using these because I have them. So we'll talk about that in a second. We'll get there. We'll get there, I promise. Okay? So kind of like yogurt, cultured butter does have a really unique, slightly tangy flavor. So it's not quite butter. It is butter, but it has a different flavor, and it's fantastic. I love it. Okay? Its unique flavor enhances pretty much anything you might cook or bake. You want to keep it really, really simple when you're making this butter. So you're only going to need 3 basic ingredients. You're going to need cream, you're going to need something to start your culture, and you're going to need salt at the very end. We're not doing salt right now, but you do need it. Okay? Now, can you buy cultured butter in stores? Yes, in some areas. Not all areas have cultured butters. It's also really easy to make it, though. It's easy to make it, inexpensive. Cultured butter in the stores is actually really expensive. So making it at home is easy. So let's talk about the cream you're going to use. You do need cream, not milk. You can't make butter from milk. There is not enough butter fat in milk to make butter, okay, of any kind. So you can't use whole milk or anything like that. You can use that to make cheese because you're curdling it, but you can't use it to make butter. Butter is a cold process. There's no curdling involved. So you can't use milk. You need cream. So if you have your own cow, maybe you've milked your cow, you would separate the cream from the milk, typically using a cream separator, and just use the cream. The milk, you will drink the milk later, but the cream is what you need for butter. If you're buying, you would buy a heavy cream. You can also use a whipping cream. This is heavy cream. It doesn't matter. It actually doesn't matter. I know a lot of people tell you, well, you can't use whipping cream because it has something added to it and stuff like that. It doesn't matter. Whipping cream cultures just fine, okay? People will talk about, well, it cultures fine. It's fine. So you can use heavy cream ideally. You can also use whipping cream instead. What you can't use is ultra pasteurized. You can use pasteurized. In fact, I do encourage using pasteurized because sometimes when people make their own butter, cultured or otherwise, after a couple of days, it kind of has a Parmesan smell or Parmesan taste. That's often from raw milk because it hasn't been pasteurized. It's not necessarily bad. It's just that's where that flavor and taste come from. And if you don't like that flavor and taste, I really do recommend pasteurizing it. You can just do it on your stove. I'll do a video on that one day. But you can just do it on your stove, on a pot, heating up your milk, blah, 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 blah. It's easier if you pasteurize it first. Pasteurize the cream after you have removed it from the milk. It is really annoying to separate cream from your milk that has already all been pasteurized together. Okay, it's annoying. It's possible, but it's annoying. So if you are going to pasteurize your cream, do it after it's been separated. It'll just make your life easier. You cannot use ultra pasteurized, however. Ultra pasteurized milk will not properly thicken, okay, and become butter. It just doesn't work very well. So don't use ultra pasteurized. It's okay to use pasteurized. You can use heavy cream, you can use whipping cream, but just don't use ultra pasteurized. It's going to have a problem. Okay? Get the best quality cream you can find. Yes, you can buy it at the store. No problem. You can use store-bought cream. Heavy cream, just look for over 30%. Okay, you're looking for like 33, 35%. Do not go with your half and halves or your light creams or your coffee creams. They don't have enough milk fat. So, cream. You have cream. Next thing you need is some kind of culture. I have powdered culture. You can actually, this is the brand I have in the cupboard, but you can actually just buy this. You can buy it, if you don't have a local source, you can usually order it online. You can also use a little bit of old buttermilk. So maybe 1/8 of a cup of old buttermilk. You can use some unsweetened or plain yogurt. You can use sour cream. You can use creme fraiche. All of these things are traditionally made with cultured cream, and they will still have the cultures in them. So you can add a little bit of old buttermilk to your cream. If you don't have any of that, and you happen to have culture, buy the culture. I have cultures all the time because I'm kind of into cheese making. But if you don't have cultures, you can just use buttermilk. It's not a big deal. So, in the case of using a culture, it's really not hard. Okay? There we go. Use whatever you have on hand. After you have done this, you can actually, this will also make buttermilk, by the way. We are going to make both cultured butter and real buttermilk out of this recipe. And in the future, after you've done that, if you are using a culture, it's just white powder. So if you are using a culture, what you can do after that is just save a little bit of the buttermilk each time and add buttermilk to the culture, for the culture, instead of using all your powder. So you can do that. So start off with a powder, and then just reuse the buttermilk. It'll continue to culture. It's fine. Don't worry about it. Okay, how to make it. So the first thing we're going to do, cream. How much? I'm using about 1 liter, which is equivalent to approximately a quart. So the exact amount is not that important, but around 1 liter. And my culturing agent, that is specifically for around 1 liter. If I was making a bigger batch, I would use a second envelope. And we're just going to combine that. We are not going to use a mixer or a whisk, because here's the thing about cream. Cream turns into whipped cream real fast. Okay? Whether you're using whipping cream or heavy cream, once you start whipping it, it will turn into whipped cream. And we don't want that right now. We will do that later. But right now, we want this culture to get started. So gently stir in your cultures. Okay? Gently, gently stir that in. Stir that for a minute or so. And then what we need to do is we need to cover this. Okay? I'm just mixing. Mix. So once it's fairly well combined, it will, if it's not fully dissolved, it's okay, because it will continue to dissolve. We're not touching this for a while after we do this. Now we want, just want to get my, there we go. Scrape that off on the side. Remember, we're not using milk, we're using cream. Now you need something to put on here. You have to cover it. And I'm actually just using a beeswax sheet. Okay, I'm just using one of my beeswax sheets because they're fun and I like them. So you want to cover it, though. It does need to be a tightly lidded container. So if the container you're using, I'm using a mixing bowl because we are going to need the mixer tomorrow. If you don't have a tightly lidded container, use like plastic wrap, or like I'm using right now, I'm using the beeswax wrap. You want a tight fitting lid, okay? You want a tight fitting lid. So I'm literally tucking it under the lip. I'm literally tucking this all under the lip so that it is tightly lidded and sealed. You don't want air getting in. The whole point here is this is going to sit overnight and it's going to culture. You're going to ignore it. You're literally just ignoring it. You want to leave it at room temperature, so don't put it in the fridge. You're not putting it in the fridge. You're just leaving it on the counter. Just leave it. We're going to ignore it, and we're going to ignore it for at least 24 hours. It should start to thicken in that time frame. Do not heat it. If you start heating it, you're going to end up with yogurt instead. We're making cultured butter. We don't want it to go as far as turning into yogurt. We want it to thicken slightly. We do not want it to be yogurt. So do not heat it. Leave it at regular room temperature and add that culture to cold cream. That cream should have come out of the fridge. Do not heat the cream first. It's okay to heat the cream when you were pasteurizing. That's fine. But then you need to start this process with cold cream. It has to be cold. So now our cream has the culture in it and it is now sitting in this bowl. We are going to ignore it for 24 hours. We will come back and check tomorrow. If it's not ready in 24 hours, if it hasn't started to thicken, just started to thicken. It doesn't have to finish thickening. But if it hasn't started to thicken, then we'll leave it for another 24 hours. But literally, we're just going to ignore it. You don't have to do anything for 24 hours. Leave it covered. Don't peek. We're just going to walk away. And in 24 hours, we will come back and hopefully it will have thickened up and have a stronger, more pronounced tangy smell as it ferments. It will sour and be quite thick. Not as thick as like butter, because obviously we're going to make butter out of it, but it will be about the consistency of a standard buttermilk instead of a cream. So we'll come back in 24 hours and take a look at it. All right, we have waited 24 hours. Let's take the top off and take a look. It's been sitting out on the counter. It's really important that it sit at room temperature. Okay, we don't want it sitting in the fridge and we don't want it getting hot. So that's what it should be bubbly and it should be a little thicker than it was yesterday. So we're going to give that a gentle whisk, gently. I'm just using a little whisk because it doesn't matter. But I'm just using a little tiny whisk just to kind of mix that in. It should be bubbly and it should have a slightly tangy smell. It should not smell bad. So the culture should not have spoiled your cream. The culture should just have enriched it. So it should have kind of a tangy scent. It should not stink. Okay? So it's definitely cultured. Now we actually have to chill it. You do not make butter with anything warm. You only make butter with cold cream. So we're going to put this back on. Use my beeswax wrap. Get that nice and tight. And then we're going to stick that in the fridge for 1 hour. Just the fridge, not the freezer. We don't want to freeze it. We just want to stick it in the fridge. And then we are going to leave it in the fridge for 1 hour so that the butter fat will stay firm and not become greasy when we're churning it. Okay, if the cream is too warm, what's going to happen is that buttermilk, the butter fat in there is going to get all greasy and it won't separate properly from the buttermilk. So we want the butter to come out of the buttermilk, not get stuck in it. We don't want that grease. So we're going to pop it in the fridge and chill it for 1 hour. All right, it's been just over an hour. So we are going to take our wax sheet off. These are our beeswax sheets. Take our wax sheet off. We won't need this particular wax sheet anymore. Okay, there's our cultured cream. We're now ready to turn it into cultured butter. So the way we do this, we're gonna pop it in the mixer. Okay, you're gonna use the whisk attachment. You can also use a blender or you can use a, mine's blanking, or you can use a jar and just shake it, or a little butter churner. I find the thing that works the best and works the fastest is the blender, but I hate blenders. If you've watched too many of my videos, you'll know I really dislike blenders. So I'm not going to use a blender, I'm using a mixer. So this is going to happen in a few different stages, okay? That's the thing with making butter. So you're going to end up having to make whipped cream, and then it is going to end up breaking. You want to break it. You want to mix it until it has softened to a kind of a soft whipped cream texture. Then you want to mix it some more. Then you want to mix it some more after that. So I'm going to time lapse this. If you've watched my standard butter making video, you've probably seen this part before. It's not any different. However, if you haven't, I'm still going to stop and explain the different stages. Right now, it's just cultured cream. So we're gonna drop this down and we're gonna let it run for a few minutes, and then I will come back and we'll just stop it. I'm gonna time lapse the actual whipping, but I'm going to show you each stage so you know exactly what you're looking for, okay? The first stage is, right now, it's just cream. So let's start it whipping. We will time lapse this part, and then we're just gonna keep checking in, and I'll just show you the different stages so you know what to watch for. All right, we are getting there. We've got a very soft whipped cream. That's not what we're looking for, okay? That's just a couple of minutes. So we need more than that, okay? So we are going to set it again and go for a few minutes more. Ever done this? Been whipping your cream to make whipped cream? All of a sudden you go a little too far and it starts to get a little bit grainy. It starts to separate. Did you know you were partway on your way to making butter? You were. This is cultured butter, so it's a little bit different and it happens a little bit faster than regular butter. But still, we've all done it. We've all over whipped our cream and gone, geez, it's garbage now. Turns out it wasn't. Turns out you could have made butter. So let's drop this back down and keep going, because we're still not quite there yet, but we will get there. All right, now our whipped cream is starting to break down. Now it's starting to drip. So this is a good time to take a silicone spatula, run it around the edge, and just scrape that off on the whisk, just so that you don't waste any. Let's see how quickly this is happening. It's really only been a few minutes, and we're just going to keep letting it go. The next stage we're going to watch for is you're going to watch for actual splattering. Okay, you want actual water, basically it'll be buttermilk, but water splattering up onto your guard. So that's what we're going to watch for next. Lower that down, get our guard in place. And now we're just going to keep it going till it totally separates. What you're waiting for is it to separate into butter and buttermilk. You'll know, and I'll show you. Okay, when the splatter happens, and it did, it's done. So what we want to do is lift this up and watch the drip. Watch that drip. The drip is buttermilk. The solid stuff is butter. So we don't need this lid anymore. And I'm just going to move the butter out of the way for a second. Bring forward my other bowl. So I have a bowl here, and I like to have a bowl with a spout because that spout allows me to pour off the buttermilk. And I have a fine mesh strainer here. That fine mesh strainer, let's just move this completely out of the way. Sometimes I try not to move it out of the way and then I regret it. So, fine mesh strainer, okay? Muslin, cheesecloth, call it what you will. I am using a lint-free cheesecloth. Muslin, reusable so I can wash them. Being able to wash them matters. And my son is just getting me ice water, because that's what I'm going to need. And I just dropped some butter. Remember, this is cultured butter. This is cultured. So if it smells kind of tangy, it shouldn't smell bad. Smells tangy, sure. Does not smell bad. Get out of my thing. So you just want to get your butter out of here, because this is all butter. See how thick this is? That's butter. Just plucking it out of there. Okay, done with the mixer. Now we're going to take our bowl, and remember, our bowl is full of buttermilk and butter. So what we're going to do is we're going to pour that directly into our strainer. Right there. And we want that buttermilk. That's real buttermilk, by the way. That's real cultured buttermilk. If you make non-cultured butter, the buttermilk that comes out of that is, you still need to add lemon or vinegar to it in order to make it behave like buttermilk. This stuff is real buttermilk, okay? So this stuff does not need to be cultured. It doesn't need lemon. It doesn't need anything. I'm just going to get the last of that. We don't want to leave any behind. It's good stuff. Okay. Done with that for a while. Get rid of the bowl. Now, we are going to have to squeeze the buttermilk out of this. Okay? So we're just going to gather our muslin. Like so. And squeeze. And yes, real butter is yellow. Okay, squeeze that buttermilk out. So yes, that butter is quite yellow. It's supposed to be. It's not white. Butter is not white. Once it butters, once it globs, it's not white anymore. Okay. All right. Now, we need a fresh bowl. Put that fresh bowl in there. And get rid of this strainer. We won't need it. Dry our hands because I have buttermilk on them. And let's deal with the buttermilk first. This is real buttermilk. It is ready to go into a container. Okay, so I have this container here that I use. And because this is cultured, it goes straight in. So we're just going to use a strainer. Okay, we're just going to use a strainer and we're going to slowly pour that through. And even though it's cultured, I'm going to let that sit on the counter overnight just to finish doing its butter thing. So this is buttermilk. Okay? That's real cultured buttermilk because you have the culture in there. That is real cultured buttermilk. Put the lid on. That is our first product. Buttermilk. Delicious, excellent, wonderful stuff. Set that aside. Let's keep working on our cultured butter. Okay? We are going to wash the butter. You don't strictly have to do this, but if you don't, you will regret it. This makes it last longer, taste better, and it gets the last of that buttermilk out of there. You want to do this in really cold water, okay? And I like to leave it in the muslin. It just makes your life easier. And I literally just take my palm and press it down into the water, and I turn it over, and I press it into the water. And you notice how that water is turning cloudy? Well, you'll have to do this a few times. Okay? That water's pretty cloudy. We're not done though. I'm going to press it a couple more times. I'm just going to press it down from its... There we go. Press it in a different direction. Press. You're washing that butter. And now this is obviously not going to be clear because I just started. You probably have to do this, 5 times, maybe 6 times. Depends how good you are at squeezing the buttermilk out. But the whole point is you want that water to run clear. So my water is not running clear yet. So let's ditch the cloudy water down the sink. You can feed it to your plants. You can put it down the sink. Whatever works, but it's not buttermilk really, it's too diluted. Another rinse. Again, ice water's our friend. And I'm going to do this a couple times, and I'm going to do it not on camera. You don't really need it to be on camera. You just keep doing this. You literally knead the butter in the ice water. Okay, I like to keep it in the muslin. You can take it out of the muslin. I like to keep it in the muslin just to make my life easier. And that's not clear either. So we will come back when I have pretty clear water, and then I'll do one final knead. But until then, you don't have to watch me knead butter. It's exactly like that multiple times. All right, I'm going to do one last water bath here. Remember, ice water. This one should run pretty clear because the last one was pretty darn close. So this one is probably pretty clear. Okay. Yeah, nothing else is coming out. No more cloudiness is coming out of that, which means we're pretty good. So again, squeeze the last of the water out. I'm going to pull over a cutting board, and I'm going to pull over a fresh sheet of muslin because I don't want to use the wet one. So we're going to pull the butter out of the muslin. The muslin, because the muslin is designed to be against cheeses and butters and stuff, it comes off really easily, much easier than it would off your hands. So get all the butter off of there. Like, it's designed for this, so it's just a little easier. Okay, this is going in the wash. This is going in the sink. Drying my hands. You do want dry hands for this. This is completely cultured butter. If you smell it, you'll smell a slight tang that you don't smell with standard butter. The same goes for the buttermilk. You'll smell a slight tang that you do not smell with buttermilk from a butter that you made without culture. So this is quite cultured. This is delicious. So we washed the butter and we repeated that several times. The cold water helps firm up the butter, and the washing just helps remove any of that excess buttermilk. This prevents it from spoiling and helps extend its shelf life. Now we want to put it in a container. I recommend these molds. I know I said that with the other butter video. Recommend these molds. Some kind of mold. Because yes, you can just put it in a container, but I like to be able to measure it. Okay? Now, do you want to salt it or not? Is the question. So, you got your butter mold, you got your butter. Do you want to salt it? You do not have to. If you're using it for baking and cooking, you can just not salt it. I'm going to salt mine, but I'm going to very lightly salt it. So I'm only adding like 1/8 of a teaspoon. Okay, I'm only adding about 1/8 of a teaspoon. And then I'm just going to use the muslin to knead it. I'm not adding very much because it's cultured. You don't have to. Sometimes I don't add salt to my butter, and sometimes I do. If you do, it makes it last a little bit longer. Okay, don't add very much. Literally, I used 1 liter of cream. I'm getting probably 3/4 of a cup of butter, and then half a liter of buttermilk. There we go. So I'm just doing it like that. I just lightly salt. Now you need to put it in a container. I like these mostly because it's pre-measured, so I can squeeze them and put them in the fridge and then take them out, and they're pre-measured, and this one has even tablespoon lines. So I really recommend getting a mold, but you don't have to. You can put it in an airtight container or whatever you have. As long as you can put that container in the fridge, you're probably fine. I just really like using the molds. You don't have to. It's a preference thing, but I like it because then I can wrap them, and I know that this is a 1/2 cup of butter. So if I'm kneading cultured butter, I can just grab one of these sticks. We'll come back after I have refrigerated these and we will wrap them up. Okay, that one looks pretty good. So I'm probably going to get about 1.5 cups, to be honest. That's probably what I'm, not 1.5 cups. Yeah, 1.5 cups about from that one batch. Is it worth it? To me, it is. To me, it's absolutely worth it. I like making my own butter. It's a lot of fun, really easy, not difficult at all. Like, I mean, it's just not difficult. Okay, it's not at all a hard thing to do. So because it's not a hard thing to do, I like doing it. And all you need is some cream. The higher the percentage of cream, higher the milk fat, the faster the cream happens. And cultured cream forms butter much faster than its uncultured counterpart. And for culture, again, you can use the actual culture like I did, or you can use a little bit of buttermilk, a little bit of yogurt. You can use a little bit of Greek yogurt. You can use, there's a lot of different things, because a lot of things use that same type of culture. Even mozzarella cheese technically uses the same type of culture. But yeah, you can do pretty much whatever you want when it comes to the culture, as long as you have something to culture it with. Yeah, there we go. So I'm just taking some of this from this end and stuffing it in here. But yeah, so I get about 1.5 cups, roughly, of butter out of that, and it is divine. Okay, this stuff is so good for baking, so good for cooking. It's fantastic. So I'm going to grab the lid. First, I'm going to wipe the butter off my hands. You get lots of butter on your hands doing this. If you don't like that, making butter's not for you. But we are going to pop this in the fridge. We will come back in about an hour, and we will pop these out of the mold, and I'll show you how I store them. Even though you have a lot of different options for storage, I have a particular method that I like for storing them. Even if it's just regular butter, I like to do that. So I like a particular method. So I'll show you how I do it. You can store them even in a plastic bag if you want, or you can keep in the molds. It doesn't matter. But I have a way that I like to do it. So after we stick those in the fridge, we will come back and I'll show you how I like to store them. All right, our cultured butter is set. It's been in the fridge. This is really easy to unmold, and I really like using these wax paper sheets. This is my, not wax paper, beeswax sheets. This is my preferred way to store my butters and my cheeses. So you just scrunch it up in your hand, get it warmed, so you can stick it to itself later. Open it up. Move that for a second. Pop the lid off the butter. You can leave it in the molds. I just prefer not to, especially because I have another butter that I'm going to be making shortly because I'm out of honey butter. I don't know if I'll record that one or not. I will at some point record my honey butter because I really love my honey butter, but I don't know if I'm recording it this time. I might. I don't know. Depends. I don't know if I feel like recording anymore tonight. But you just unmold your butter. So I have almost 3 sticks, which is almost 1.5 cups. That one goes to that. I unmolded that a little messy. You can put them in the freezer if you like, and that will help keep them from unmolding. But then I just position these like this. Get the butter off my hands. Always get the butter off your hands, trust me. Like this. Like this, and push that down. And then I like to make little labels. I really do enjoy my little labels. They're my favorite thing. I take my little, oops, drop them. Yes, I take my little labels, stick them on there. Ta-da! Cultured butter. And we have our cultured buttermilk. These are both fantastic products, okay? There's a lot of different ways you can use cultured butter. I like to slather it on my homemade sourdough, but you can also put it on your waffles or your pancakes or, you know, any baked good that you like. It is really good for baking, and it's really good for mashed potatoes. My son actually is going to use this whole chunk because he wants to make himself croissants tomorrow. So that's one of the reasons I had to make cultured butter again, because he needs it again. You can also use it in lieu of traditional butter. I do like to have both. This one's a little bit tangier. The other one's a little more sweet. I like having both because it gives me options. Okay, that's why I like having both. An extra bonus of making cultured butter from scratch is you make real buttermilk in the process. The flavor is unparalleled. You can use it in buttermilk pancakes, waffles, other dishes. I use the buttermilk in all my baking if I have it. I just do. So again, just to review the culturing, you can use a powdered culture. Okay, you can absolutely use a powdered culture, which is what I used in this case. But most of the time, I actually use a little bit of leftover buttermilk. As long as your buttermilk is tangy and has a good aroma, then it will properly culture the other buttermilks. Okay, all you're looking for is getting that bacteria in there. Otherwise, it's fantastic. All right, so you can culture it with leftover buttermilk or a little leftover yogurt. It's all the same culture. All of that stuff is just made slightly different, but it's the same basic culture. It's even the same culture for mozzarella cheese. So it's all the same culture. You just need a little bit of that culture and then allow that bacteria to kind of take over and kind of do its thing. Then it gets all nice and tangy, and then it's got this great flavor, great aroma. And remember that homemade butter is yellow. I had somebody say they were suspicious of butter that was white, that was yellow, because butter should be white. No, it shouldn't. You saw it turn yellow in the bowl. Okay, homemade butter turns yellow. That's just the way it is, because this is the butter fat. It separates from the milk and it is yellow. Okay, the fat is yellow. So it is always supposed to be yellow, not white. Anyway, that is about it for us here today at Andersen Acres. Enjoy your cultured butter, and we'll see you tomorrow.